Hello, welcome back to my channel. This is a bit late, this video, but this is kind of a post-New Year's, post-Christmas, holiday season, start of the year book haul, and also TBR for the first part of the year. So I think I have about 25 books here because I have a problem and I get way too many books. So yeah, I've got 25 books. I think the first 14 or so are part of my kind of winter and spring TBR list. So what I'm trying to read kind of from now till the end of April. And then the rest are books that I hope to get to right after that. So yeah, without further ado, here are my books. To start, I've wanted to read the series for a long time and I finally got the third book, so I'm gonna start it now. This is R.F. Kuang's The Poppy War. So here, I'll just hold up all three. So it goes The Poppy War, The Dragon Republic, and The Burning God. So I really want to read these three. R.F. Kuang sounds really cool. I think she is either completing or has just completed her PhD in modern Chinese history. So these are really kind of historical academic fantasy books. You know, kind of the names and places are changed, but it's very clearly talking about kind of 20th century Chinese history, kind of their conflicts with Japan, their civil wars, kind of Western imperialism. So I'm really excited for those. They're apparently very dark, but I think everything seems to be handled really well and respectfully, so very excited for that. On a similar kind of train, in the sense of a reimagining of Chinese history, is She Who Became the Sun by Shelly Parker Chan. This is really cool. It was described to me, or not to me, but on the back or online, it's described as, I think, Song of Achilles meets Mulan. So that just sounds very cool. This was huge when it first came out. I saw it kind of everywhere, online and in shops, so I'm really excited to get to this. Then we have an author who I kind of hear about all the time and I've never read anything by her, so I think it's time to start. We have Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. This is the first in the Live Ship Traders trilogy, which I think is the second trilogy in her, I think it's called Realm of the Elderlings. So I'm being a little unorthodox by starting with this trilogy as opposed to the Farseer trilogy. But I just think this seems more my vibe. It's kind of pirates and very seafaring. So yeah, I'll do this first, and if I really like it, then I'll do Assassin's Apprentice, which is the first of the Farseer trilogy. And then we have Speaker of the Dead by Orson Scott Card. I read Ender's Game, it's kind of a classic of modern sci-fi, when I was a kid, like when I was 14 or 15, and I enjoyed it, but I just kind of had no interest in going on for some reason. And now, I don't know, I think I'm at an age or a place in my life where this sounds interesting to me. It always just sounded really kind of mundane. Or not mundane, but kind of just dry. But yeah, so this is the sequel to Ender's Game. It seems a lot slower, a lot more kind of heady and kind of philosophical. But yeah, I'm excited for it. They did a reprint. It's the same cover, but they just kind of, I think they remastered some of the colors and made things pop a bit more, so I was like, why not? So yeah, that's the sequel to that. Okay, and then we have kind of self-published book who made it big. Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. So I think, yeah, this started out as a self-published book and then was picked up by Orbit because it was really successful. Yeah, this just sounds really interesting. It's kind of, I think, West African inspired, epic fantasy. I really don't know much about the story, but it sounds kind of really dark and really moody, and just kind of intense, but in a lot of really cool ways. And I've seen a couple interviews with the author, Evan Winter, and he just sounds really cool. The way he talks about writing is really cool. So I'm very excited for this. Then we have Black Sun by Rebecca Rowanhorse. This has also been on my list for a long time. I got it, I think, when it first came out, and I haven't read it yet. But I first was introduced to Rebecca Rowanhorse in actually a sci-fi class I took in university, where we read a short story of hers, I think called Welcome to Your Authentic Indian Experience, which was this really kind of interesting, indigenous-focused sci-fi kind of AI or like virtual reality story. So that was a great story. And then this is the first, I think, in a trilogy. I really don't know much about it other than that it's kind of inspired by pre-Columbian North America. So yeah, it just sounds really cool. The cover is beautiful. The sequel comes out this year in 2022, so I thought it's a good time to pick it up. Then we have a great cover again, Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynn. This is an author I haven't read anything by, and for no particular reason. I haven't really had any interest in reading anything by him until this book. I think Faithful and the Fallen is his other main series. And nothing against it. I don't really know much about it. It just didn't really seem like my thing. But this book seems kind of interesting. It's kind of Viking-inspired fantasy, but just it sounds very cool. It sounds like it's really well done. The cover's pretty awesome. And they just showed the cover for the sequel, The Hunger of the Gods, which looks equally as incredible. So yeah. Okay, and then finally finishing out this trilogy, The Empire of Gold by S.A. Chakraborty. Daevabad trilogy. I feel like the Daevabad trilogy and the first Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson are kind of the two things that really got me into fantasy as an adult. So I read the first two of these books a couple of years ago now, or at least a year ago. And then I just never really got around to this for some reason. I don't know why, because I love the first two books. City of Brass and Kingdom of Copper are awesome books. I love Chakraborty's writing. So I'm very excited to finally get to this. Very cool, kind of Middle Eastern inspired. It takes place, I think, in 18th century Cairo, but kind of loosely, like it starts in 18th century Cairo, and then it mainly takes place in a mythical city of Jinn. So yeah, very excited for this. I think she's got one more collection of short stories coming out in this world. And then she's working on another book, also kind of inspired by Middle Eastern, like Muslim fantasy. So yeah, very excited for this. Okay, and then we have this beautiful edition. I've read this series before, but I wanted to kind of reread it because it's kind of a classic. So this is Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings. I found these beautiful editions, which are all, I mean, illustrated, but it's full paintings and stuff. They're really beautiful. Yeah, if you can kind of see. But yeah, so I found these beautiful hardcover editions. That's Fellowship of the Ring. This is The Two Towers. Beautiful covers and editions. And then The Return of the King. So yeah, I really wanted to kind of pick this up again because I read Tolkien. I read The Lord of the Rings when I was, again, maybe 14 or 15. And I really liked it, but now as I'm getting more into trying to write myself, I feel like this is kind of a masterclass in like world building, and I mean, just the work he does in like languages alone is really impressive. So I think it'll be good to kind of revisit this. And then this is the last of the kind of spring TBR, but this is Dreams of the Dying by Nicholas, I think, Lietzau, who I think is a German author. This is, again, a self-published book. It's a really handsome book, especially for being self-published. Nothing against self-publishers, but it's just a really impressive edition. And it's kind of cool. It sounds like kind of dark fantasy, not in the sense of like grimdark, but more in the sense of kind of horror fantasy. So that sounds really cool. I thought it was so impressive how at the end he includes, what's it called? Like an appendix that's got all of this beautiful art in it and kind of illustrations of the wildlife. So just so much work clearly went into this. And yeah, the story sounds really kind of mysterious and, again, kind of moody, thought-provoking, and the setting just sounds kind of creepy. So this sounds really cool. Okay, so then moving into books that aren't on my immediate TBR, but I hope to get to right after. I'm sure other books will probably pop up and I'll get to those first, but this is what I want to get to in the near future. So first we have this kind of really cool sounding, it's a YA book. It's called The Call by, I think, Peter O'Gwillan. It's an Irish author, and yeah, it's kind of a YA horror based around kind of Irish mythology. It's pretty short, so it'll be a nice kind of get through it in a day or two, hopefully. It just sounded really cool. The cover stuck out to me. The Irish mythology part is really interesting. I don't read a lot of horror, so I want to try to get into that. So I thought this would be a nice kind of palate cleanser, but also kind of into a realm that I don't usually read. And then we have The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. This sounds kind of right up my alley in terms of the themes and kind of settings. It's kind of revolution, empire on the brink of collapse. A lot of what I read right now is kind of inspired by my academic interests. I'm just finishing my master's. I actually submit my thesis tomorrow. So so a lot of the stuff about kind of nationalism and revolution and empire and things like that. So this sounds really cool, this epic fantasy. It's kind of military fantasy, which usually isn't my thing, but this sounds really cool. I think it's the author's first book, which is really cool. So yeah, this sounds awesome. And the cover, again, just stuck out to me. Then we have The Black-Tongued Thief by Christopher Bulman. I've never read anything by this author. I think this is their first kind of straight-up fantasy. Usually I think they're a horror author. I really want to read one of his other books. I think it's called Between Two Fires, which is kind of a medieval horror. But yeah, this sounds kind of like a kind of fun, witty, kind of dark fantasy. I really don't know much about the plot, but it's an author I really wanted to get into for a bit, so I thought I'd try this one out. Then we have another self-published kind of a success story, The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. This is a really, again, like very pretty book, nice cover, nice binding and everything. And yeah, it's an independently published kind of epic fantasy. I don't really know much about the story. I think its magic is kind of elemental. It's kind of usually compared to Avatar: The Last Airbender. So yeah, that's kind of all I know about this, but I thought it would be a good one to pick up, and I've heard nothing but incredible things. Then, this was a gift for Christmas, Foundry Side by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is kind of a cool, I don't know if it's quite steampunk, but kind of industrial revolution setting, kind of fantasy. I know almost nothing about the plot other than that it centers around a thief. But yeah, it's very cool. The sequel's out. I think there's a third book coming this year. I could be wrong. But yeah, so I'm excited for this. Again, I'm really excited for this the more I found out about the author. This is A Memory Called Empire by Arcadie Martine. I forget her real name, but she's also a professor. She's a scholar. I think of kind of the Byzantine Empire, I think. And apparently this is kind of an epic sci-fi, kind of based around ideas of kind of nationalism and borders and empire. So this sounds really interesting. The title is so cool. The sequel, I think, is called The Desolation Called Peace. So yeah, this sounds awesome. I'm really excited to get to it. And yeah, the fact that she was kind of a scholar and an academic, kind of like R.F. Kuang, I just thought was really cool. And then we have another author that I've never read, but I've got two books here that I really want to try and get into. Where is it? Here it is. Yeah, so this is Michael J. Sullivan. So this is Nolan, which is the first book in the Rise and Fall series. This is another book that, frankly, the cover kind of got me, and then I got interested and looked into it. It sounds very cool. It's like Goblin Wars. And yeah, I'm kind of intrigued by Nolan because, again, he started self-publishing, I think writing books mainly for his daughter. And then over time they kind of got popular, and then they got picked up, I think, by Orbit. But that was a while ago, and then he's written a bunch of works. But I'm excited because all of them seem to take place in the same world. It's kind of like all the series are separate, but they take place in the same world. So it's just kind of each series you read, you don't necessarily need to read the other ones, it sounds like, but they just kind of flesh out the whole world. So I'm really excited for this one. And then the other I have by him is Theft of Swords, which is the first two books. It's an omnibus edition of the first two books of the Rhaera Revelations. So I think these are his first books. I think it's The Crown Conspiracy and Avampartha, yeah. So I'm excited for these. This seems kind of like classic, swords and sorcery fantasy. But everyone talks about this. Everyone talks about these two characters, like their friendship, which is apparently really well done. So this sounds cool, and yeah, I'm excited by the kind of world that he's created through all of his series. And then we have The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. So this, again, I think it's the Dandelion Dynasty. This just sounds really cool. I think it's another kind of East Asian inspired epic fantasy, again, about kind of revolution and empires and, you know, all that stuff. I don't really know much about the story, but it sounded kind of like my thing. Ken Liu, I don't think I've read anything by. I know he's translated the Three Body Problem. I think that's where I'd heard of him. And I've heard of some of his short story collections, so I'm really excited for this. I think the 4th book is coming out this year or just came out. And then these final 2 books are nice, just little palette cleansers, I think. The first one is Mort by Terry Pratchett. So this is one of the Discworld novels, which is a massive series that I have not read anything in. I think it's like 41 books by Terry Pratchett, kind of this big figure in kind of absurdist comedic fantasy. Yeah, I think this one follows Death and his assistant, I think whose name is Mort. And yeah, it just sounds really funny and silly and light. But apparently they've all got really good heart to them and kind of nice, I don't know, nice, like really nice moments. So I'm really excited for this. I think it'll be fun, a nice kind of catch my breath between all the revolution and all that stuff I'm reading. So yeah, and then the last one is the first in the Murderbot Diaries, All Systems Red by Martha Wells. This is sci-fi, because I usually read mostly fantasy, so there's a couple sci-fi, because I want to try to get back into that, because I used to read a lot of science fiction. And yeah, so this, again, it's a really short little novella. It sounds really fun and quirky and satirical. Everyone talks about how funny it is and how kind of endearing the main character, the kind of titular Murderbot, is. So yeah, I think this will be really fun, just like quick read, probably read it in a day or 2. Yeah, so that's my TBR for the next few months. I think 14 of them were, yeah, for kind of January to April, and then the rest hopefully kind of late spring and early summer. So yeah, let me know if you've read any of these books, or if now that you've got a taste for my style, if you've got any recommendations. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for checking in.